She battled against her feelings, yet the human was the only one who HFY Stories, best HFY Stories. The station hung in quiet orbit above a pale blue moon, its wide rings catching distant starlight. It was a place built for cooperation, not comfort. Steel corridors joined alien designs that followed no human logic. For Commander Sarathiel, it was order made solid. She had spent her life mastering control of space, of fleets, and most of all, of herself. Sarathiel belonged to a proud warrior species known for discipline and long memory. Her kind, believed feelings clouded judgment. They taught their children early that attachment led to weakness. She had followed those rules without question, rising through ranks, earning respect, commanding mixed-species forces. This station was her latest assignment, created by the Galactic Council to test cooperation between old powers and new ones. Humans were the newest. They were strange creatures, short-lived, loud in emotion, reckless, many thought. Sarathiel had reviewed their files carefully. Humans had spread fast, adapted faster, and survived against odds that should have ended them. Still, many council members believed humanity's success was temporary. This station would show the truth. When Sarathiel entered the command hall that cycle, the air carried the low hum of systems and quiet movement of officers. Species of many forms worked at their stations. She scanned the room, calm and focused, until a new presence caught her attention. The human officer stood near the central console, waiting. He was not impressive by her species' standards. No armor plates, no natural weapons, just a simple uniform, worn boots, and eyes that seemed too alert for someone so still. His name appeared in her display. Lieutenant Elias Ward, transferred from a frontier relief fleet, skilled in engineering, crisis response, and civilian coordination, an odd mix. She dismissed the brief interest and approached. "Lieutenant Ward," she said, her voice smooth and firm. "You are late." He straightened instantly. "Yes, Commander, apologies, transit delay from docking ring 6. I won't let it happen again." No excuses, no protest, just acceptance. "Interesting. Your assignment is operations support," she continued. "You will follow orders without delay. This station functions on precision." "Yes, Commander." His gaze met hers briefly, not in challenge, not in fear, just attention. Then he looked away, respectful. Sarathiel turned back to the room, already done with him, or so she told herself. The first crisis came sooner than expected. An energy fluctuation rippled through the station's outer grid during the next cycle. Alarms rang low, controlled, but serious. Several sectors lost gravity, and civilian habitation rings drifted into emergency lock. Sarathiel took command instantly. Orders flowed from her like practiced rhythm. Teams deployed. Engineers moved. Security sealed vulnerable points. Then reports arrived. A shuttle carrying mixed-species civilians had failed docking alignment and was drifting toward the moon's gravity pull. The automated systems were offline due to the fluctuation. Rescue drones were unavailable. Time was short. Sarathiel's mind calculated loss probability. "Hi." Before she could issue a final command, a voice cut in. "Commander, permission to attempt manual override from shuttle exterior." She turned sharply. It was the human. "That maneuver is unsafe," she said. "Your survival chance is low." He nodded once. "I know. But it's higher than 0, and there are children on board." Children. The word carried weight even across species. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, too long by her own standards. "Permission granted," she said. "You will be tethered at all times." "Yes, Commander." Minutes later, Sarathiel watched through external feeds as Elias exited an airlock in a pressure suit. The moon's pale light reflected off the shuttle's damaged hull. His movements were careful but quick, hands steady despite the danger. Magnetic lines anchored him as he reached the control panel. Sparks flew when he opened it. Radiation readings spiked. "Lieutenant, abort," she ordered. "Levels are rising." "Almost there," he replied, voice tight but calm. "Just need one clean connection." She felt something twist in her chest. The override engaged, thrusters corrected. The shuttle slowed, then stabilized. Cheers broke out across the command hall. Relief washed through the station. Elias returned minutes later, exhausted, suit scorched but alive. Sarathiel watched medics rush him away. She told herself the reaction she felt was professional satisfaction, nothing more. In the cycles that followed, she noticed him often. He worked long hours without complaint. Assisted alien engineers with patience, learning their systems instead of forcing human methods. He spoke gently to frightened civilians, regardless of species. When tensions rose between crews, he stepped in not with authority but with understanding. Others began to rely on him. That disturbed her. Humans were not supposed to lead like this, not quietly, not without force. One cycle, during a planning review, a senior officer from an older race questioned human presence openly. "They are inefficient," the officer said. "Emotion-driven, unstable." Elias remained silent. Sarathiel responded before she realized she had decided to. "The human lieutenant has reduced civilian incident rates by 17% since arrival," she said. "That is not inefficiency." The room fell silent. Elias looked at her, surprised. She ignored it. Later, she found herself reviewing his service history alone. Frontier evacuations, disaster zones, conflicts where humans had stood between danger and the defenseless. Always the same notes. Refused evacuation until last civilian was safe. Took responsibility beyond rank. She closed the file sharply. Attachment leads to weakness, she reminded herself. Yet when another alert sounded, minor this time, she found her gaze searching the room for one human figure before anything else. During a quiet shift, she encountered him in an observation corridor overlooking the moon. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back, watching the slow spin below. "Lieutenant," she said. He turned. "Commander, you should be resting. Medical reports advised reduced duty." He smiled slightly. "I'll rest later. The view helps." She joined him despite herself. "Does it not trouble you," she asked, "to risk your life so easily?" He considered the question. "I don't think of it as risking. Someone has to go. If I can, then I should." "That logic is flawed," she said. "Survival preserves strength." "So does saving others," he replied quietly. Silence stretched between them, filled only by distant stars. Sarathiel felt the familiar walls within her mind strain. This human did not seek glory. He did not demand recognition. He simply stayed. She turned away first. "Return to duty when cleared," she said. "Yes, Commander." As she walked back toward command, she told herself the unease in her thoughts was temporary, a result of stress, of unfamiliar species dynamics. Yet deep inside, something had shifted. The station did not return to normal after the shuttle incident. On the surface, systems stabilized and schedules resumed, but something deeper had changed. Word spread quickly through corridors and shared halls. The human lieutenant who had risked his life was no longer just another officer. He had become a quiet point of trust. Sarathiel noticed it in small ways. Crew members paused when Elias spoke. Disputes ended faster when he stepped in. Even species that usually avoided humans began requesting him by name for joint tasks. This was not how influence was supposed to work. Authority came from rank, from strength, from long history, not from simple actions. She told herself it was temporary. Still, she assigned him more often to mixed species teams, telling herself it was efficient use of resources. Nothing more. Then the tests began. The Galactic Council had planned them quietly. Pressure scenarios meant to reveal weakness. Supply limits were tightened. Communication delays increased. External patrols were reduced without warning. It was not announced as a trial, but Sarathiel recognized the signs immediately. They wanted to see who broke first. Tension rose across the station. Old rivalries resurfaced. Accusations followed every minor failure. Some officers argued that humans should be removed from critical roles before things worsened. Sarathiel listened. She said nothing. When a food distribution error caused shortages in one civilian ring, anger flared fast. Different species blamed each other. Crowds gathered. Security prepared containment. Elias arrived before orders reached him. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He listened. He stood among the civilians, unarmed, hands open, letting them speak. He acknowledged fear instead of dismissing it. He worked with logistics crews through the night, rerouting supplies, repairing damaged units by hand when systems failed. By the next cycle, the ring was stable. Reports credited coordination success to human mediation. Sarathiel read the line twice. Later that cycle, she summoned Elias to a private briefing room. "You exceeded your assignment," she said. "Yes, Commander. Your actions could have caused loss of control." "Yes, Commander." He did not argue, he simply waited. "Why did you intervene without authorization?" she asked. "Because waiting would have made things worse," he said. "People needed someone to stand there with them." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You risked escalation." "I risked myself," he replied. That felt acceptable. Something sharp passed through her chest. She dismissed him with a short nod, unsettled by the fact that part of her agreed. The next crisis was far more dangerous. A rival coalition vessel entered the sector under the claim of inspection rights. Their reputation was clear. They pushed limits, they provoked, they expected fear. Their commander demanded access to station data and docking priority, knowing it would disrupt operations. Sarathiel refused. Power readings spiked across the rival ship, a threat thinly veiled. Council response would take hours, too long. Security crews prepared defensive formations. Some officers whispered that humans would panic first. Elias stood among them, calm. When a system's malfunction caused a defense array to overload, one of the older species officers froze. Training failed him. Panic took hold. The array began to destabilize. If it collapsed, the station would lose its shield edge. Without waiting, Elias moved. He crossed the platform, shoved the officer clear, and manually disengaged the array using exposed controls. Energy burned through his gloves. Alarms screamed. "Lieutenant, fall back," Sarathiel ordered. He did not. He held the switch until the system shut down completely. Then he collapsed. Medics rushed in. The rival vessel withdrew slightly, sensing hesitation, not weakness. The station held. Hours later, Sarathiel stood outside the medical bay, arms folded, posture rigid. She told herself she was there to assess readiness. The door slid open. A medic nodded. "He will recover. Minor burns, exhaustion." Relief hit her harder than expected. She entered quietly. Elias lay awake, staring at the ceiling. When he saw her, he tried to sit up. "Don't," she said. He smiled weakly. "Guess I broke protocol again." "Yes," she said. "You did." She paused. "You saved the array." "Team effort," he replied. "I just moved fastest." "That is not accurate." Silence settled between them. "You are aware," she said slowly, "that many believe humans are the weakest species here." He shrugged. "People believe lots of things. Does it not anger you?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But proving them wrong works better than arguing." She studied him carefully. No pride, no bitterness, just truth. "You were willing to die," she said. "I was willing to stay," he corrected gently. That answer stayed with her long after she left. The rival vessel eventually departed, unable to justify further pressure. The council sent delayed praise. No mention was made of the human lieutenant by name. Sarathiel noticed. She also noticed how the station reacted, how crews spoke of humanity differently now, not loudly. Not formally, but with respect. Humans did not dominate, they endured. That frightened some. A formal challenge followed soon after. A council representative questioned Sarathiel's command choices, pointing directly at human involvement in critical systems. "Emotion clouds judgment," the representative said. "Humans act from feeling, not logic." Sarathiel felt the room watching her. She thought of the shuttle, the civilians, the array, the quiet courage she had witnessed. "Then your definition of logic is incomplete," she said evenly. Murmurs spread. "Humans act from connection," she continued. "They do not flee when fear appears, they move toward it." The challenge was withdrawn. That cycle, Sarathiel stood alone in her quarters longer than usual. She replayed memories she had tried to ignore. Each time Elias had stayed when others stepped back. Each time she had felt something. She pressed a hand against her chest, unsettled. This was not weakness, she told herself. Yet when another alert echoed faintly through the station, her thoughts went instantly to one place. Where is the human? She did not yet admit what that meant. But the battle she had trained her whole life to avoid had already begun, quiet, unseen, and impossible to command. The warning came without alarm. That alone made it dangerous. Sarathiel was reviewing long-range scans when the data stream shifted, numbers changing in patterns that did not match any known threat profile. No energy spike, no weapons charge, just silence where there should have been motion. She straightened slowly. "Confirm readings," she ordered. Officers checked their stations. Confusion spread. "There is nothing," one reported. "No ships, no debris, but our sensors show mass distortion." Empty space that was not empty. Sarathiel's mind moved fast. This was not a test. This was something new. "Close civilian sectors," she said. "Bring all response teams to readiness." The order barely finished when gravity flickered across the station. Lights dimmed. Then came the sound, a deep vibration that passed through hull and bone alike. Fear rippled through the command hall. From the distortion, shapes began to appear, not ships in the normal sense, but structures folded in on themselves, bending space as they emerged. Unknown, silent, massive, and unregistered force. Communications failed instantly. External channels went dark. Internal systems followed in waves. They were alone. Reports flooded in. Sections losing power, artificial gravity failing in clusters, panic rising in civilian rings. Sarathiel issued orders rapidly, but this enemy did not behave like any she had trained for. They did not fire. They disrupted. They erased control. Then came the first casualty report. A medical wing lost containment. Species unable to function without stable gravity were trapped. Security teams hesitated. The distortion fields were unstable. Entering could mean never returning. Sarathiel opened her mouth to assign units. Elias was already moving. She saw him sprint across the command floor toward the nearest access lift. "Lieutenant Ward, stop," she ordered. He paused only long enough to look back. "If we wait, they won't survive," he said. "You do not know what you are facing." "Then someone has to learn." Before she could counter, he was gone. Anger flashed through her, not at him, at herself. She redirected teams, reinforcing his path, pushing systems beyond safe limits to give him a chance. It felt wrong, reckless. It also felt necessary. Minutes stretched into something worse. Feeds from inside the distortion zones were incomplete, static-filled. Broken images of Elias pulling civilians through collapsed corridors, carrying those who could not move, guiding others by voice alone. His breathing was heavy, but his tone stayed calm. "Follow the light. One step at a time, I've got you." Species that had never trusted humans clung to him without question. Then the distortion surged. A wave of force tore through the station, knocking officers from their stations. Sarathiel grabbed the edge of the command console as the floor tilted. When the motion stopped, damage reports screamed in. One corridor collapsed entirely. The one Elias was in. Her chest tightened painfully. She forced herself to breathe. "Locate the lieutenant," she said, voice steady by training alone. No response. Minutes passed, then more. She replayed every moment she had failed to stop him, every order she had not given fast enough. This was the cost of allowing attachment. This was why her people avoided it. And yet the thought that broke her control was not failure, it was loss. Finally, a weak signal flickered on a secondary channel. Elia's voice came through, rough but alive. "Commander, civilians secured, corridors gone." "I can't reach the exit." Relief crashed into her, followed instantly by fear. "Hold position," she said. "We are routing power." "Negative," he replied. "Structure's unstable. If it shifts again, it'll take them with it." "How many?" she asked. 8, he said. "Different species, one injured." She closed her eyes for half a breath. "You are not expendable," she said quietly. There was a pause. "Neither are they," he answered. That was when the truth became impossible to ignore. Sarathiel rerouted systems manually, overriding safeguards she had sworn never to breach. She sent drones into the distortion despite losing half of them instantly. She pulled every favor, every authority she had earned across decades. For one human, for 8 lives. Against something the galaxy did not yet understand. The drones reached him just as the structure began to collapse again. Elias secured the civilians first, strapping them into emergency pods, pushing them towards safety one by one. The last pod launched. He remained. "Lieutenant, move now," she ordered. "I will," he said. Just the signal cut. The corridor folded inward. For a moment, Sarathiel thought she had lost him. Then the drones detected motion. A single life sign, barely stable, drifting at the edge of the distortion. She acted without hesitation. The station's main thrusters fired in a controlled burst, tearing part of the distortion open long enough for the drones to pull him free. The strain nearly crippled the station, but it worked. When Elias was brought into the medical bay, unconscious and broken, Sarathiel followed. She stood beside the bed as medics worked, ignoring protocol, ignoring rank. She did not leave. Hours later, when the unknown force withdrew as silently as it had come, the station remained damaged but alive. Casualty numbers were far lower than expected, because a human had stayed, because she had chosen to act. When Elias finally woke, he found her there. She did not speak at first. "You disobeyed direct orders," she said at last. "Yes," he replied weakly. "You endangered the station." "Yes." "You saved lives," she said. He looked at her then, really looked. "So did you." The words struck deeper than any accusation. "I should not have cared," she admitted, voice low. "My people believe emotion leads to failure." "And?" he asked. "And when I thought you were gone," she said, "I realized how wrong that belief was." Silence filled the room, heavy and honest. The galaxy had tested humanity. Humanity had not broken. Neither, she realized, had she. Outside the medical bay, whispers spread. Stories traveled faster than reports. Of a human who stood against the unknown. Of a commander who defied doctrine to save one of her own. The Council would not ignore this. Nor would the galaxy. Days passed as repair crews worked without rest. Hull breaches were sealed. Systems were rebuilt piece by piece. The strange enemy did not return, yet its shadow remained in every corridor and every mind. Officers spoke more quietly. Civilians moved closer together. Everyone remembered how close they had come to losing everything. At the center of those memories was one truth that could not be denied. When the galaxy faced something unknown, it was a human who stood in front. Elias recovered slowly. His injuries were not severe, but exhaustion ran deep. His body had reached its limit long before the danger ended. Medics ordered strict rest, though he protested weakly. Sarathiel visited him every cycle. At first, she told herself it was duty. A commander checking on her officer, nothing more, but she stayed longer than necessary. She listened when he spoke. She noticed how his presence eased the tension in the room, even while lying still. News reached the Galactic Council quickly, too quickly. A delegation arrived without warning, their arrival announced with full formality. Their vessels filled the outer docks, a display of authority meant to remind everyone who truly ruled. Sarathiel welcomed them with controlled calm. The council chamber filled with representatives from old powers. Their voices carried confidence shaped by centuries of dominance. They began with praise for station survival. Then came questions, sharp ones. Why were safeguards breached? Why was a single officer allowed to override protocol? Why was a human placed in a position of such influence? Sarathiel answered each question clearly, without raising her voice. He acted to save lives. That is not sufficient justification. It is the only justification that matters, she replied. Murmurs spread. One council member leaned forward. Humans are driven by emotion. That is dangerous. Sarathiel held his gaze. Emotion did not break this station. Fear did not destroy it. What failed was rigid thinking. Silence followed. She continued. You sent us a test disguised as cooperation. You withdrew support. You watched. When the unknown arrived, it was not your fleets that responded. It was one human and those who followed him. The council did not interrupt. You fear what you do not control, she said. Humans cannot be controlled by fear. They move toward danger when others step back. A pause. You asked whether humanity belongs among us, she finished. That question has already been answered. The council requested proof. Sarathiel did not hesitate. She authorized release of all station records, unedited, every moment of the crisis, every choice made, including her own. When the footage played, the chamber fell quiet. They watched Elias carry civilians through broken corridors. They heard his voice steady while the station shook. They saw Sarathiel override ancient laws to pull him back from nothingness. They saw trust. The session ended without verdict. That night, Sarathiel stood alone in the observation corridor again, looking at the same pale moon. She felt older somehow, not weaker, changed. Footsteps approached behind her. You're not supposed to be out of bed, she said without turning. I walked slow, Elias replied. She faced him. He leaned lightly against the wall, still pale but standing. The council reviewed everything, she said. I figured, he answered. They don't like surprises. No, she agreed. They do not. They stood in silence, watching the stars. I never meant to make things harder for you, Elias said at last. You did not, she replied. You made them clearer. He looked at her then, uncertain. I know your people don't do this. Attachment, connection. She nodded. We were taught it weakens command. And now, she said quietly, I see it strengthens resolve. She met his eyes fully, no rank between them in that moment. You stayed, she said. When leaving would have been easier. He smiled softly. So did you? The council's decision arrived the next cycle. Humanity was granted full equal standing within the alliance. Not as observers, not as probationary members, as equals. The reason given was short, demonstrated resilience under unknown threat. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth. Humans did not break when tested. They adapted, they cared, they stayed. Elias was offered promotion. He declined. I'm useful where I am, he said simply. Sarathiel approved without argument. The station entered a new phase. Training protocols changed. Mixed teams became standard. Humans were no longer placed at the edge of plans, but at the center of cooperation. Fear faded. Respect took its place. One cycle later, the unknown force appeared again at the edge of known space. not attacking, observing. This time the station did not panic. Sarathiel stood at the command console. Elias stood beside her. "What do you think they want?" he asked. "Understanding," she replied. "As we once did." She opened a communication channel. The signal carried no words, only patterns, curiosity, caution. Elias adjusted the translator manually, thinking aloud, trying new approaches. Others joined him without waiting for orders. The first response came moments later. Not hostile, not silent, a beginning. As the station engaged in peaceful exchange with something once feared, Sarathiel felt a strange sense of calm. She understood now what made humans different. They did not conquer fear. They walked through it together. Later, when the shift ended, Sarathiel and Elias walked the quiet corridors. The station lights glowed softer now, adjusted for comfort instead of control. "You changed the galaxy," she said. He shook his head. "We all did." She stopped walking. "My people will not approve of what I feel," she said honestly. "Do you need their approval?" he asked. She thought of the council, the crisis, the moment she chose one life over doctrine. "No," she said, "I do not." She placed a hand over her chest, the gesture unfamiliar but no longer frightening. "For the first time," she said, "I am not battling this feeling." He did not speak. He did not rush. He simply stayed. The stars outside continued their endless motion. And somewhere in the vast galaxy the story spread. Of a commander who learned that strength could be gentle. Of a human who proved that courage was not loud. And of a future where humanity was no longer the species that needed permission to belong. They had earned it.